Let's start with the headline first. The first group of 2,000 suspected gang members in El Salvador have been moved to huge new prisons. The centerpiece of President Nayib Bukele's self-declared war on crime. The Ohio toxic train wreck was 100% preventable, but there's no evidence the crew did anything wrong, investigators say. Anthony Albanese has become Australia's first sitting Prime Minister to take part in Sydney's gay and lesbian Mardi Gras parade, one of the biggest events of its kind in the world. Tens of thousands of suspected gangsters have been rounded up in the country under a state of emergency following a spike in murders and other violent crime. The jail will eventually hold more than 40,000 people. Pictures show the first massive group of inmates, tattooed and barefoot, being led to the facility in shackles. The prisoners are left sitting on the floor with their hands behind their shaven heads, stacked closely together before being taken to their cells. President Bukele tweeted that the first 2,000 people were transferred at dawn in a single operation to the Center for the Confinement of Terrorism, which he says is the largest jail in the Americas. This will be their new house, where they will live for decades, all mixed, unable to do any further harm to the population. The mega prison in Ticuluca, 74 kilometers 46 miles southeast of the capital San Salvador, comprises 8 buildings. Each has 32 cells of about 100 square meters, 1,075 square feet, to hold more than 100 prisoners, the government says. The cells only have 2 sinks and 2 toilets each. President Bukele declared a war on gangs last March, passing emergency measures which have been extended several times. The emergency powers have been controversial as they limit some constitutional rights, such as allowing the security forces to arrest suspects without a warrant. More than 64,000 suspects have been arrested in the anti-crime drive. Authorities have said criminal gangs such as MS-13 and Barrio 18 number tens of thousands and are responsible for homicides, extortion and drug trafficking. The aim of the mass arrests is to make the gangs disappear altogether, the government says. Human rights organizations have argued that innocent people have been caught up in the policy, and some of those held have reported being subjected to cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment. But Bukele's anti-gang push remains popular with Salvadorans. Anthony Albanese has become Australia's first sitting Prime Minister to take part in Sydney's gay and lesbian Mardi Gras parade, one of the biggest events of its kind in the world. Huge crowds packed the city's Oxford Street as more than 12,000 participants and 200 floats passed by. It is the first time the parade has been held in its traditional form since 2019 due to COVID restrictions. This is a celebration of modern Australia, Mr. Albanese said. He added that it was unfortunate that he was the country's first leader to march in the parade while in office. People want to see that their government is inclusive and represents everyone, no matter who they love, no matter what their identity, and no matter where they live. Penny Wong, the first openly gay female in Australia's parliament, also took part in the celebrations. The presence of the Prime Minister, who has marched in the parade in the past as an MP, was greeted with cheers. But his critics have accused him of pandering to a minority that's hijacking Australia's social agenda. Opposition MP Barnaby Joyce criticized Mr. Albanese for attending a party instead of dealing with a crime crisis in Alice Springs, a remote town in Australia's Northern Territory. Mr. Albanese was not the only politician to attend Mardi Gras. Members of other parties, including the Greens and Liberals, also came to show their support. It is not the first time an Australian Prime Minister has attended the event. Malcolm Turnbull was present in 2016 but did not march. The Mardi Gras parade has been running since 1978 and grew out of a protest marking the anniversary of the Stonewall riots, an uprising by members of the LGBT community in the New York more than 50 years ago. For the past 2 years, the parade has been held as a seated event at the Sydney's cricket ground due to the pandemic. The year's event coincided in Sydney's with World Pride, which promotes LGBTQ plus rights globally. Other world leaders also have taken part in pride parades in the past, including Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his former New Zealand counterpart Jacinda Ardern. It's been more than 2 weeks since a train carrying hazardous chemicals derailed. Here's what's happened since. A total of 38 train cars derailed in East Palestine near the Ohio-Pennsylvania border. They included 11 tank cars carrying hazardous materials that subsequently ignited, fueling fires that damaged a dozen cars that did not derail. The NTSB said in preliminary report Thursday, 5 of those derailed train cars were carrying 115,580 gallons of vinyl chloride, according to the report. Vinyl chloride can increase the risk of cancer and is highly flammable. Those 5 cars continued to concern authorities because the temperature inside one tank car was still rising, indicating a polymerization reaction, which could result in an explosion, the report said. To help prevent a deadly explosion of vinyl chloride, crews released the toxic chemical into a trench and burned it off 3 days after the derailment. The new revelation came after residents who have reported health problems since the toxic train wreck lambasted Norfolk Southern's CEO and after calls for Norfolk Southern to buy the homes of residents who don't feel safe. NTSB said derailment was 100% preventable. While no cause of the derailment has been released, investigators are focusing on one car's wheel, set and bearing. Video of the train before the derailment showed there appeared to be an overheated wheel bearing. The report said footage showed sparks flying from underneath the train. Investigators are looking into what may have caused the overheating, Homendy told the news reporter Thursday evening. One wheel bearing's temperature reached a critical level 253 degrees Fahrenheit above the ambient temperature and prompted an audible alarm that instructed the crew to slow and stop the train to inspect a hot axle. The report says the train's engineer applied the train's brakes and additional braking after the alert of an overheating axle, the report states. The derailment was 100% preventable, Homendy said. We call things accident. There is no accident. Every single event that we investigate is preventable. But she said there is no evidence that train's crew did anything wrong. The engineer was already braking to slow down behind another train, so when the alarm sounded, he responded immediately and increased the brake application, Homendy said. During this deceleration, the wheel bearing failed, she said. Car 23 derailed, and the train initiated an emergency brake application and came to a stop. Homendy later told the reporters that it's still too early to tell what would have helped prevent the disaster. It could be regulation changes. It could be recommendations to Norfolk Southern, to the Department of Transportation, or to rail car manufacturers, or to emergency responders. But again, it's too early to tell, Homendy told reporters, highlighting that NTSB does not have regulatory authority and can only issue safety recommendations. Shortly before the NTSB released the new details, members of agency met with U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg as he toured East Palestine for the first time since the disaster. Buttigieg on Thursday called the expanding regulations around trains like the one that derailed and said the railroad industry should be doing more to implement higher safety standards. Hazardous materials could be going through communities in stronger tankers, he also added. Some waterways in the area were contaminated after the derailment, killing more than 40,000 fish and other aquatic life, but officials said those contaminants have been contained. And Ohio authorities have repeatedly said air quality and municipal water tests in East Palestine show no dangerous level of chemicals. But residents worry about potential health effects, and some have reported bloody noses, burning throats, nauseous headaches, and vomiting since the toxic wreck. Ohio Limited John Husted said Norfolk Southern, which reported a record-setting operation profit of $4.8 billion last year, should consider buying property of people who may not feel safe or would want to relocate as a result of the spill. Norfolk Southern is paying $6.5 million to derailment victims. Meanwhile, it's shelling out $7.5 billion for shareholders. Husted told the reporters Thursday that findings from the NTSB investigations could be the basis for a criminal referral. Across the border in Pennsylvania, where some residents were also ordered to evacuate, the state attorney general's office is already looking into a criminal referral against Norfolk Southern at the request of state environmental officials. Norfolk Southern spokesperson Katie Barrett declined to comment specifically on the criminal referral. I think our action to work with local, state and federal leaders from the beginning, support the community and lead on environmental remediation speak for themselves for the moment, Barrett told the reporters. East Palestine residents' worry rashes, headaches and other symptoms may be tied to chemicals from train crash. In addition to vinyl chloride, chemicals of concern at the site including those released when vinyl chloride breaks down, according to the EPA. During the town hall, Ohio's government stressed he didn't want to minimize any medical issues potentially linked to the derailment, saying that's the reason he requested medical experts to the community. Medical teams from the U.S. Centers for Disaster Control and Prevention and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services will be on the ground this week at government.Mike DeWine's request. The state also opened a health assessment clinic for residents who worry their symptoms could be linked to the wreck. The ongoing cleanup efforts at the derailment site, including removal contaminated soil and water from under the railroad tracks. Contaminated soil became a point of contention last week after a public document sent to the EPA on February 10 did not list soil removal among complete cleanup activities. It is not yet known what significance or impact the soil that was not removed before the railroad reopened on February 8 will have had on the surrounding areas. EPA says it can fine Norfolk Southern $70,000 a day if it falls short of cleaning up and paying for the Ohio toxic train wreck. DeWine said 4,588 cubic yards of soil and 1.1 million gallons of contaminated water have been removed so far from East Palestine. The railroad tracks will also be taken up so that the soil can be removed. Officials will continue testing the municipal water weekly to ensure it remains clean, and at least 74 private wells have also been tested, with results pending. Residents with private wells should continue drinking bottled water until they receive their test results, DeWine said. But some residents remain hesitant to believe what they have been told.